The Treasurer says tonight's budget will provide some cost of living relief to Australians. The changes to capital gains tax, negative gearing, the NDIS and fuel security are some of the big ticket items, with the government to deliver smaller deficits over the next 4 years. Jim Chalmers says the budget will focus on resilience and reform.
There are 5 major packages in tonight's budget. A fuel security package, a package focused on the cost of living and housing, a productivity package, a tax reform package, and also a savings package as well. There will be more than the usual amount of savings and more than the usual amount of reform in the face of more than the usual amount of global economic uncertainty. So the budget will be about helping people through this global oil shock at the same time as we reform our tax system and our economy for the future as well. Now, the developments in the Middle East are a reason to act more decisively and more urgently, not to kick the can down the road. There are substantial issues in our economy, in our tax system, in our housing market. It would be easier to leave them unattended, but it would be wrong. And so this budget makes a number of difficult decisions in the near term and in the longer term to get our budget into better nick, to reform our tax system and to deal with some of these issues which have been left unattended for too long. The budget deals with major issues like inflation and productivity, tax and housing, and intergenerational fairness as well. These are some of the major challenges that the budget that I released tonight with Katy Gallagher seeks to deal with and respond to in our economy. This will be a very ambitious budget in its breadth and also in the nature of the difficult decisions that we will be taking on. Now, obviously, people will go to any length to defend the current arrangements in the tax system, as I said. It would be easier to leave them undisturbed, but it wouldn't be the right thing to do. So tonight we take a series of right decisions for the right reasons. Tonight we choose the hard road of reform, not the path of least resistance.
Housing will be at the centre of this year's budget. The Treasurer releasing all the details on that tonight, of course. Our political reporter, Stephanie Borys, joins us now from Canberra to discuss this. Steph, these tax changes amount to a broken promise, but how is the government explaining this change?
Well, Gemma, this is a bit of a funny one in that the government has sort of been out there selling this change for the past few weeks, but they're not actually confirming it yet. And that's because of the way budgets work, right? The government chooses what it wants to confirm or deny ahead of the annual budget. What we know is that, yes, there will be changes to negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount, but we just don't know all of the details and exactly how it will be played out. But we know it's occurring simply as well because of this messaging we're getting from government. The government is trying to sell this change around fairness. They say that it's about ensuring there's adequate housing supply, that they need to use all the levers possible to try and boost that supply. They're pointing to the fact that younger Australians are struggling to get into the housing market, sort of trying to justify why this change is needed. Take a listen to the Finance Minister, Katy Gallagher, on Radio National Breakfast this morning, outlining why the change is needed, while acknowledging essentially that, yes, if these changes go ahead, it is a broken election promise.
If, and again, not preempting the announcements the Treasurer makes later tonight, but if a government changes its mind, comes to a different view, gets advice that has an alternate position, whatever, then their job is to front up and explain why they have come to that decision. I think that's the responsibility of governments.
OK, so will the message about the need for change work?
Well, the government is explaining why it's needed in the sense that additional housing supply is essential to help more people get into the market. But obviously they're not able or don't want to explain why they didn't put this policy forward at the last federal election. One reason is obviously that it is very politically sensitive, and in the past when Labor has suggested it, it didn't go very well for them. What has changed in this sense, Gemma, is that housing's always been an issue. It's not like since the election of last year, things have drastically changed. What has changed is that this government received a massive mandate from the Australian people, and that's given them confidence to go further in their reform, to make further changes. And they believe that the need to fix housing is more of the focus, and people will understand that and almost forgive them on this broken promise. You know, Mr Albanese was asked multiple times during the election campaign if there would be changes to negative gearing or the capital gains tax discount. He got frustrated at reporters for constantly asking the question, but now that's changing. We saw something similar with the stage 3 tax cut changes that didn't end up affecting Labor at the last election. So here what we're seeing is a desire from the government to go further and harder, and the confidence that given the situation we're in at the moment, voters will forgive them. Also, the context of this, Gemma, keep in mind that at last year's federal election, it was the first time that Gen Z and millennial voters overtook the number of baby boomer voters. Governments have traditionally sort of looked at policies that, you know, ultimately favour the baby boomer population because they were such a large voting cohort, but that mix-up is now changing, and there's a responsibility from governments, oppositions to take a look at what can be done to help the younger generations as well.
Stephanie, on a subject not budget related but happening on budget day, the government's response to the Peter Murphy gambling report is being tabled today. What do you make of the timing of that?
Yeah, timing is everything in politics, Gemma, and this timing can be argued one way or another depending on which side of politics you're on, but it does have to be questioned. The reason why, it's been more than 1,000 days since this report was tabled into online gambling. The late Peter Murphy did chair this report, and it did make more than 30 recommendations about how to address online gambling. We saw the Prime Minister just before Easter announce some changes to how gambling will be addressed by his government. There were questions even then around the timing of that announcement, given he was giving a National Press Club address. The focus was on fuel, but he also added in this announcement around gambling, which some people have said didn't go far enough. We were aware that the government was going to release its full response to this report sometime this week. So, you know, the expectation could be obviously today. It is confirmed that, yes, it's being tabled today. Why we're talking about it and what the concern is, it's being released when all the journalists are in lockup this afternoon. So, you know, transparency, the ability to report on this in full, yes, the opportunity is there, but of course at the moment the focus is on the budget. So you can sort of see why there are questions around the timing of this release when it's taken them years to get to this point.
Political reporter Stephanie Borys, thank you.